Good morning, everybody. My name is Andrew Garner from Evosys. Welcome to this webinar on field service management. I hope everybody's well today. I know we've got people from all over the place on this webinar. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for investing an hour of your time with us. You'll hear from three of us today through the course of this. Hopefully you will have a valuable experience. We will be asking you to ask questions, which we'll answer at the end. There's a box for you to type those in, so please do so as you go along. So let's do some introductions for you all. I'm Andy Garner, so I'm Head of Higher Education at Evosys, one of Oracle's leading partners, and I'll ask the team who are with me to introduce themselves now so you know who they are. Andy, should we go to you first?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm Andy Murray. I work at Oracle and I am specialist in workforce management and have been for about 12 to 14 years, depending on how you count it.
Phil?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Phil Summons. I'm also from Oracle and I'm the Service Cloud Director for Higher Education in the UK. Been with Oracle quite a long time and I'm really enjoying working in the education sector.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to switch my webcam off now because people don't need to see me for the next hour, but I will be reappearing later in the webinar when we get to the Q&A sessions. So hopefully you are all aware of kind of why we're here in the agenda we're going to go through. So this is obviously the welcome introduction bit. We're going to talk a little bit about field service management and how it fits into CX. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in higher education, although I assume most people will kind of already know that because you're working in it, so we'll skip through that quite quickly. And then we're going to hand over to Andy Murray, who's going to do the lion's share of the work today and take you through the scenarios about how field service is currently working or how it might work in a kind of COVID environment, and how we can help you really manage this process and make things better. Little bit about Evosys for those who don't know, and I'm not going to labour this point, so don't worry, but in essence, Evosys are a large Oracle partner. We do the full Oracle stack. We have over 1,000 cloud customers already around the UK, and quite a few university clients across Europe. Obviously, because we can do the full stack, which covers Oracle CX, but also HCM, ERP, and all the other good stuff that goes up to make the Oracle end-to-end vision. Phil.
Good morning, thank you. So just a very little bit about Oracle. Again, won't labour the point. Oracle, if you could move the slide on slightly, Andy. Oracle covers a great spectrum of IT. A lot of people know Oracle in the higher education environments. Most universities and colleges use Oracle or touch Oracle in one way or another. We have a full stack of applications that cover ERP, HR, but also field service. Field service is obviously what we're talking about today. It really encompasses all of the little round circles we've got at the bottom there, all the way from data across to chatbots in today's modern world. So the service really does cover a lot of different ways. Today we're just concentrating on the field service element. We do have many other parts of Oracle service that are used in education environments. Could move on, please, Andy. And keep flipping through. Would be good to bring up all of the different elements of the service area. So we have a number of different areas, as I've mentioned. Knowledge, probably one of the most interesting things. We do have another seminar coming up that's going to address knowledge, but today we're talking about digital customer service. So we're talking about chatbots, messaging, and the main part really is the fields, the field service elements, which are on the right. So Andy will be going into these in great detail as we go through. So the service element that is comprised of Oracle is completely cloud, and it's really service in many ways. So that's the way we like to look at it. So if you could move on, please, Andy. And Oracle is a leader. You're, I'm sure, all familiar with Gartner and their magic quadrants. You'll see that Oracle full field service is up in the top right-hand corner. So we've won awards for field service. in many different industries. But we'll turn over to Andy, who can show you all about it, tell you all about it. Thanks, Andy.
I don't want to click X's because they are actually quite dangerous X's on screens like this. Okay, so thank you for your patience. So yeah, as I said, my name's Andy Murray. I work for Oracle and my focus is on field service. Now we have a safe harbor statement slide, which is essentially just covering the fact that if I talk about anything that's future product scope or anything related to price or future releases, then that covers me for that. But actually, I'm going to focus on core product today. So before we get into it, what I'd like to do is pull up a poll to the audience, please. I'd like to find out how you're managing currently in a COVID world with your students back to university and back to the halls. Are you still deploying a full field service, or are you deploying a field service but in a limited capacity, or are you actually not deploying people in the field at the moment? So if it would be possible for you to make selections, that would be great. I can see the results coming in. I'll give it another 10 or 15 seconds. Okay. Well, I think I can see, I don't know whether you guys can see the results on your side, but essentially we are looking at a very limited workforce at the moment. 20% of you have said, yes, you've still got guys and girls in the field, but in a limited capacity. And 80% of you have actually said, no, you pulled them back. So that's interesting. I expected a few to be saying yes, full capacity, knowing utility companies and the like that we look after, they have found a way to work around COVID. But yeah, thank you for that. Okay. So as we know, the world has changed, and we're using technology essentially to reimagine a way forward. We need to still support our students, and it has got more complicated in 2020, and I probably expect that 2021 will continue in a similar vein. So in the new normal, we have been forced to adapt to our customers, our students' change in behavior to ensure that everyone stays safe and healthy, and that covers both staff and students. What exactly does a partial opening mean to you and your students? How will this impact your employees? You know, they're not necessarily coming into an office space on a regular basis at the moment. Everybody's working from home, those that can work from home. But in a service world, you can't fix a broken boiler remotely. You do need to go and physically work on that machine. This situation really shines a light on the business processes that aren't working so well. And it helps us to understand how agile our systems really are. So many of our students are held in stasis or in isolation, and we do need to be able to know where our staff are and where they've been in an event of a localized breakout or in one part of the university campus, for example. So with that, we know field service doesn't stop, although based on the poll, clearly there are some serious problems or issues to work around. We may be working with a reduced workforce, but maybe they're on a shift and some are isolating. But at the end of the day, with everyone sheltering in place, the lens on field service becomes even more magnified. And as more students are in their halls for longer, they're not heading out and about. Although I have been around university areas and seen a lot of students out on the streets, not really taking COVID all that seriously. But we do need to ensure that everything's running smoothly. And it's much more important than ever, which puts pressure on all the different kinds of infrastructure that we know exist around the university. So The students are staying at home, they're using the internet more, so possibly the internet's slowing down or breaking. They're using the utilities more, the heating's possibly on if it's not on a controlled central point, and obviously the temperature controls need to be worked on as well. So when everything is changing around us, how you support your students and your employees, this has shifted dramatically, and having a solution out there that's flexible enough to meet these changes head on is extremely important. And Oracle Field Service is built natively in the cloud, as Phil mentioned. So it's actually able to support your employees in an independent location, independent from a central office space. So COVID shouldn't stop them from being able to seamlessly transition to a new work environment while getting the same benefits out of a field service solution. And the mobile workers tools are enabling them to do their work, but also helping them to stay safe and healthy. So let's focus on 3 things that can take time, help in a time like this, and really get you thinking about how you can help your customers, the students, and the 3 themes are remote support, empowered customers, and informed field service. So remote support with enabling them via collaborative tools. So in Oracle, we have a number of different tools that both customers and the technicians can use. So they may be guided learning platforms, they may be knowledge platforms, they may even be using a chatbot. And then with an empowered customer, allowing them to maybe self-resolve some items around the student accommodation. So obviously we wouldn't expect them to fix some broken electrics, because that's highly dangerous and they need to be skilled. But if it's something as simple as flicking a fuse switch to turn the lights back on, or to tighten a washer or something, they may be able to do that and help out the work. And then when we think about informed field service, the visibility of the work that you have planned both today and looking forward into the future days, without the workforce having to return back to the office. So let's envisage that in the Oracle Field Service world. What I will do in a moment is go through these 4 steps. And the first one is really highlighting that the new generation, the millennials, the students that we have right now, would much rather connect remotely than picking up a telephone. They really don't like to call each other. They will text even from room to room. So calling in to report something that's broken is quite challenging. And I know from experience, I've got a 20-year-old daughter at university right now. She would much rather leave a rat in a wall than actually get it resolved, crazy as that sounds. Then we'll look at field service in a pre-COVID capacity, so how your workforce may be working in 2019. Then I'll open a different environment to see how we can reimagine the workforce and keep them either isolating as much as possible from the students and or working on some kind of shift rotation. And then we'll have a look on a mobile device as a technician who is working in the field and staying as safe as possible. Okay, so the first step, I'm actually just going to run a very short video here. What we've done is created a very basic conversation in a chat tool that allows the students to report the problems very quickly and without having to interact with another person, which is a godsend for them. It gives them a friendly and quick response, and they can report a problem at 3 o'clock in the morning without worry. It's quick and easy. It checks the identity of the student and therefore can look up which hall and which room they're in And then it gives a guided set of questions, and it's a little bit like yes/no answers, where we can ask them, is it in the kitchen, is it in your room, and guide it down to working out what the problem may be. And then under certain conditions, we can either dispatch someone immediately if we have got someone on shift, or we can offer them time slots. So bear with me, I'm going to kick the video off. If it doesn't start running in about 3 seconds or so, please let me know. I can certainly see it running on my side. So the student's going to hit get started.
It's not. Oh, there we go. It's just started.
Yeah, a little bit of a delay at the beginning. So it's just asking the student to identify themselves, and I've put my own ID in, and it's recognized that I'm Andy and that I'm actually resident in the Wessex Hall. And it's now trying to identify whether it's my room or in common areas. And the first question it's asked is whether it's to do with heating, because that tends to be a typical starting point with a lot of problems. Now, of course, at your university, it might be different, so you can structure the tree conversation in a different way. You can build it out to allow them to do more than just yes or no answers. In my example here, we've gone as a very simple engagement, but even if they respond in an English full-on sentence, the chatbot actually learns the words that the students use and works out what they're actually asking about or talking about. Okay, so let me now jump into a field service environment. So the second part I want to show is thinking about a pre-COVID world, and I'm going to be logged in as a manager or a dispatcher looking after the work that's in the system. And here on one of my dashboards, I can see that I'm in the White Knights campus in terms of the report that I'm looking at. This is actually, I've used the University of Reading. So if anyone from University of Reading is on the line today, you're going to have a better insight than some of the other universities. But essentially, I can see and hear very quickly that in my system, I have already today around lunchtime in my timeline for my demo area, I've got 55% of my work completed. It's just post lunchtime. And there are 24 active jobs that have been started, and I've got 72 outstanding jobs across about 24 staff. So I'm feeling comfortable. There's no big problems there. I can see that I've got some non-activated queues. So here I've got 2 technicians that haven't logged in for the day. Maybe they're actually on an afternoon shift, or maybe they're even the night. They're the one person that's going to be looking after the night problems. So if I drill now down into the system, what I can see here, and I've got a very basic org structure here. I've put everyone in the White Knights campus. We do also have a hall that's managed by Unite contractors. So Unite, as most of you know, builds student accommodation near to universities and allow universities to use those as extra capacity when needed. So it would make sense for them to have their own contract staff to look after the jobs in that building, rather than you having staff employed. Here on the left-hand side, we can see those completed jobs, and here on the right-hand side are the pending jobs, and then all these green jobs are the activities that people are working on. Now, I noticed that I haven't reset some of my data, so bear with me. And if I go into White Knights, okay. I will reset them manually instead. So if I split the screen here, what I am allowed to do is see any outstanding jobs that haven't been scheduled. And what I should have is these VIP jobs sitting outside. So they haven't been scheduled yet. So imagine that I've just logged in and I see these 4 jobs outstanding. I can do as simple as drag and drop them against a technician. And if they've got the right skill, then it's great, it will get scheduled. If not, the system will complain. Or I can use an automated routing tool. So I've got one here that it can see that there are 4 outstanding jobs and I've got 24 resources. And if I run that very quickly, because there's only 4 jobs left, it will literally take a couple of seconds to think about where it can schedule those jobs. And strangely enough, they've gone to almost the same places as they were before. So very simple to see in the system how you could manage the work. Clearly, jobs will be coming in throughout the day, and rather than having the routing plan run manually, you could actually have it running throughout the day, picking up those jobs and scheduling those out to the workforce. As a manager, I can also see things like Kathleen has been issued a job that will require a part to complete that job, but she doesn't have that part in her van stock. So we can do some very complex things in the system as well, but we don't have time to go through all of that today. So now let's think about how we could do this in a different way in a COVID world. So I'm now logged into a different system, or different environment rather, and I've restructured all of my technicians into a different way of working. So here on the map, we can see these yellow diamonds. They represent lots of jobs, and the darker the border, the more jobs there are sitting in one location. So you can see we've got 4 jobs sitting in this location. It's Stenton Hall. And if I go slightly further out, for example, we've just got 1 job here at Wantage Hall. And I can view this a different way. So I can go back to the Gantt view. I can see everybody, and in here, what I did to enable me in a COVID world, I actually added an icon against each of my technicians' names to show that Dean Allison is an all-rounder. He can do pretty much everything. But Mark is a specialist. He is an electrician. So Mark would actually be covering all the electrical works at a Bridge Hall, whilst Dean would be covering everything else. But let me narrow this down to just 1 hall for the moment. And if I split the screen again and show the list view, we can see that Robert's already been allocated 2 jobs. In fact, he's already started 1 job and should probably have completed it by now, but hasn't. So he's clearly working a little bit longer. His next job is in, if you see it says flat 20607. In my imagined world, 2 means the floor. 6 is the room. So room 1 and 2 on the ground floor, 3 and 4 on the first floor, 5 and 6 are on the second floor, and Pat is actually occupying room 7. But of course, it could be a number of different numbering structures across different universities. So in here, again, we could be auto-routing these jobs, but I showed that in the previous environment. What I'd like to do is pick everything that is a specialist job, so all the electrical work, and hit move, and we have an assignment tool that looks at all the different possible people it could be allocated to. Now, at the moment, we're limited to both Robert and Tom, so that we can isolate as much as possible. We have an item that would actually cause Robert overtime. So ideally, we don't want to give the electrical work to Robert because these are electrical jobs and Tom can only do electrical jobs. So we can choose to assign them to Tom. We can also look to see where they would get scheduled. And it's also worth noting that the students here in this instance has allocated that they want somebody to come between 10 and 12, between 1 and 3, and all of these jobs are between 3 and 5 o'clock. So clearly the students are trying to avoid having someone come whilst either they're studying or they're on a webinar for a student lecture, for example. So if I allocate those to Tom, then down here we get an update, and up here we can see them on the time view. So let's swap now to look at the view from Tom. So bear with me whilst I find Tom's device. And Tom actually looks like me, he's my twin brother. The mobile device is kind of agnostic. What I mean by that is if I change the size of the screen, or if I change to the size that would be an iPhone, for example, then it reshapes and utilizes the screen as effectively as possible. So in this view, Tom can see a couple of different things. He can check his inventory, he can order some parts, he can see a more clear view of the day, so the whole day. He can even go forwards and look at future dates. If he's maybe thinking about having a half day on Friday, are there already jobs allocated to him? That kind of example. So Tom can drill down into the activity, and let's just put this on widescreen for the moment. Within the mobile framework, all of the forms are configurable. So depending on what you want to capture, depending on what you want to display to your field technicians, they can access all of that information. Tom can send an on my way to the student to say that he is en route, and that will send the student either an email or a text, depending on their preference, and then that message will have a URL, a little bit like Uber, where they would see how far away the driver or the technician in this case actually is. Tom then needs to start this job. Let's just make it a little bit earlier so we can see a bit more on the Gantt. In my old world, I'm expecting all my technicians to capture a mileage. In reality, Tom's actually just driving from home to this particular hall, so the Wessex Hall. So his mileage isn't really going to be particularly important. Now that he's started the job, he can capture a whole bunch of different things. First thing he needs to do is, because it's an electrical cooker, he needs to check whether he's got the right relevant safety equipment. Is the area safe from hazards? Has he isolated the power? And then he needs to sign the form. Now, I've put this on a non-touch screen, so bear with me whilst I drag it to a different screen. And I write Tom's name in really badly. And I hit submit. And now we can see that Tom is now in a safe environment. He is now in a position to complete the works. So without laboring too long, we can see things like Tom's got 40 minutes to complete the job. If he knows it's going to take longer, he can extend that, if he's allowed to extend it. But in reality, once he's happy, he can go in and complete the work. We can give them the chance to change the completion time if they need. He can capture any detail that he needs to. And again, he can capture a customer signature or the student signature. And he can even take photos. I forget what the student's name is. I'm just going to write Jack. And then we can submit that job and continue on to the next job. And there's a note here actually, because every job that Tom is currently working on, they are in fact all at the same location. In theory, he could choose any one of the three to 5 jobs to work on first, because they're all in the same location, just on a slightly different floor. So there are a lot of features in the system. I'm not going to get a chance to show you everything, but I did talk about collaboration, and one of the nice features in the system is our collaboration tools. So here I've got a couple of technicians who are currently self-isolating. So Gary has been on leave for about 10 days. And I can actually have a conversation with Gary just to double check when he's due back. So I had that conversation earlier. He's confirmed back to me that he'll be back on Monday, and I can then swap him in and put Jane on leave because she's actually showing some symptoms, and we can self-isolate Jane from Stenton Hall. Now, I did mention at the beginning with the safe harbor statement that I would show only core product, but what I wanted to show is because of COVID and because it doesn't show very quickly in people that are infected, maybe 5 or 10 days later, what we can do is build some custom forms using the out of the box capability. So here I can go in, let's imagine that one of our students has called up and said, I've been confirmed with COVID. So here's Bradley, our student, and we can search to see who of our technicians have been to the same block as where Bradley actually resides. So I don't need to go backwards and look through all the different activities that have been completed. The system can show that to me. And then I can act in terms of making sure that these guys all get tested. I'd probably take them out of the field for the next few days to make sure that they're not actually infecting other people. Okay, so that was all I really was going to show today. So if I go back to the slides, please confirm if you can't see the slides. But what we saw, what I took you through in a pre-COVID world were some of the dashboards, and I only showed a couple of pie charts, but you can actually configure it to show different things per resource or per user. So I can see different reports from what you might want to choose. We looked at the management time view and how the technicians in a pre-COVID world could work, so they could actually all be working across campus and they could be visiting multiple different halls. We saw that the system can allocate the work in an automated way, running routing plans. And in some cases, maybe you would have different routing plans for different times of the year. So maybe when there are less students on site in the summer holidays, you would run routing a different way from when it's peak time, just before they leave university to go home for Christmas, for example. Then we had a look at a different view, arranging all of our technicians to work only across one hall at a time, rather than visiting Stenton and then going to Wessex, and then later in the day going to a different location, trying to keep everyone safe from harm. We talked about splitting it up into separate halls, but of course it might be that you have 3 very small halls that are in the same location, so maybe you want to group those together. You could look at it a different way. Then we had a quick look at the technician's viewpoint of the world and how he can interact with the work and report those works being completed. Okay, so this content has been thought over a few times now. I've presented some of this content not in a focus for higher education, but across utilities and across some of our other sectors that we work very closely with. And if you'd like, we've created an ebook. If you go to this bit.ly address in the top left-hand corner, you can access that ebook PDF document, which talks about some of the 3 steps that we recommended to utilize in a social distanced world. 79% of the participants stated that they didn't have the right solution in place to respond to rapid change. And based on the poll that we've seen today, 80% of you, so very close to 79%, said that you have currently nobody working in the field, and the other 20% said you're working in a limited capacity. So maybe Oracle Field Service could be a solution for you. We'd be happy to talk to you about that and answer any questions. So, Andrew, bizarrely, I have opened a deck that doesn't have your slide in it, even though I added your slide. So if you'd like to jump back in, and we will open up to any questions. I'm not sure whether anyone's asked any in the chat so far.
Yep, okay, that's marvelous. Well, thank you very much for taking us through that, Andrew. I hope everybody understands. Obviously, you've been through what we've seen. And really the point of this is to start the conversation with universities to say, look, there is a different way of managing the campus. there is a different way of managing how you do this maintenance on campus, and actually come and talk to us about how this works or how it might work for you. I did say at the start of this we'd answer any questions when we came to the end. While you've got, I'm going to say the experts, but that would imply there's more than one expert here, so it's actually just one expert. But please, by all means, type your questions in. There's a box on the pop-up webinar, and we'll wait a few minutes while people have the opportunity to key in and raise those questions, and then we'll answer them as we go along. If no one types a question in the next sort of 30 seconds or so, we'll wrap up and we'll let everybody go off and make a cup of coffee. So type away if you've got any questions, and we shall see if we get any come in.
I might suggest, Andrew, that if anyone's got a long question, maybe they just want to post I have a question and then start typing the long question.
Yeah, we can do that. We can unmute people if they'd rather do it that way. So there's lots of different ways we can go. Okay. Don't see any about what we've seen today coming through. So I think we'll all assume that everybody's happy with what you've done, which is a good place to be, I suggest. So I think on behalf of all three of us, and I'll let these guys, oh, here we go, we've got one. I just can't get to it.
I think Dominic's done what I suggested. Okay. Do students need an ID to log a question? So that's a good question, Dominic. It really depends on how you want to set up your systems. And I don't know your current environment at the moment, but possibly you've got a CRM system with all your students. Yeah, no, I understand, Dominic. So Dominic's just asking for everyone else, just in case you can't see the question. Do students need an ID to log a question or to log a problem/fault? So in the video, the chat video that I showed, I used the student ID as a mechanism to do a lookup of that student. But in reality, it really depends on how you want to resolve the problem. Essentially, you want to find out what the problem is, and you want to find out who's reporting the problem, whether it's their problem or they're reporting it on behalf of someone else, and where it is, the location of that problem. And it may be in a number of different locations. It could be in the student hall, it could be in their common area, it could be within the flat, it could be in the stairwell or the lift. So there's a number of times where it won't actually be related to that student and their room itself. So it depends on how you want to configure the questions, either in the chat bot or within a guided set of questions. We have different tools that Phil alluded to, where we have guided questionnaires that you can ask them, guide them through it. So they might not have to give detail if it's actually a common area. If it is their room, maybe you just ask them what the room is. But the most sensible route would probably be linking it into your student records, if you have access to those, or into a CRM platform of some description. Does that answer the question? I know it's not a direct answer, it's a roundabout the houses answer. Lovely, thank you, Dominic. And feel free to reach out to us later if you want me to answer that a little bit more detailed. Phil, myself, or Andrew can take that on board.
Okay, thanks for that. I think that is the end of what everybody wants to ask. So thank you very much for everyone for attending, for your time. Phil, do you have any last comments?
Yeah, just one more. Thank you very much for attending, and I hope you've found it useful. This is the first one in a series of 3 webinars that we're doing before Christmas, specifically for the higher education sector. The next one is November the 17th, and we'll have a speaker from the Open University speaking about knowledge management and how they use the information that they gather to help their agents that provide information through to the potential students. So we will be sending out invitations to that. So please look out for those and forward on to any of your like-minded colleagues. So thank you.
Andrew?
No, I'm good. I'm always happy to help people out. I don't expect everything to be a sales lead or anything like that. If you want to connect to me on LinkedIn and continue the conversation, I have people from all over the world, Argentina, Saudi Arabia, connecting to me and asking me about workforce solutions. It does not have to be an Oracle conversation.
Okay. Right, in that case, thank you very much, everybody. Please enjoy the rest of your day. Please stay safe, and we hope to see you again on the next webinar. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.